My name is Vix'thal of the Xylosian Concord. I am a third-cycle student at the Galactic Military Academy, and I witnessed something that defied every expectation I held about the universe. Before I tell you about Jenna Lyons, I need you to understand where I come from. My people evolved on Xylos Prime, a world of dense fungal forests and perpetual twilight. Our sun is a dim red dwarf that casts everything in shades of amber and shadow. The forests of Xylos Prime are not like the forests of other worlds. Our trees are towering fungal stalks that release clouds of bioluminescent spores at regular intervals, creating a constant haze of drifting light. The ground is soft, spongy, alive with mycelial networks that connect every living thing in a vast subterranean web. There are no predators on Xylos Prime that hunt by sight, because sight is nearly useless in our twilight world. Everything hunts by vibration, by chemical signature, by the subtle changes in air pressure that signal movement. We evolved in a world where being still and being quiet were the only paths to survival. We evolved in this environment as small, cautious creatures. Most Xylosians barely reach the chest of an average galactic citizen. Our skin shifts color with our emotions, a trait that made us excellent observers but terrible combatants. When we are afraid, we turn pale blue. When we are curious, we cycle through shades of green. When we are angry, which is rare, we flush deep red. We cannot hide our feelings. Every emotion is written on our skin for the universe to read. This made honesty a survival trait rather than a moral choice. Among my people, there is no word for deception because deception is biologically impossible. We never developed natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no venom, no armor. Our survival strategy was simple. We observed. We recorded. We stayed out of the way. When a predator approached, we changed color to match our surroundings and remained perfectly still until the danger passed. It is not a heroic strategy. It is not a strategy that produces warriors or conquerors. But it kept us alive for 1,000,000 years. And that counts for something. I inherited all of those instincts. I came to the academy to study xenobiology, not because I wanted to command armies, but because I wanted to understand the species that did. I wanted to observe, record, learn. I had no interest in fighting. I had no interest in danger. I wanted to sit in a quiet laboratory and study tissue samples and write papers that no one would read outside of a small circle of academic specialists. My parents were proud when I received my acceptance letter. A Xylosian at the Galactic Military Academy was a mark of honor for our family, proof that even a small, timid species could contribute to the greatest institution in known space. They did not understand what the academy really was. Neither did I, not until I arrived. The academy is the oldest military institution in known space. It has trained officers from over 800 species across 10,000 years. The main complex covers an entire continent, with training grounds, research facilities, and dormitories stretching as far as the eye can see. The architecture is a patchwork of every civilization that has passed through its halls. Kro'shac battle spires stand beside luminary meditation domes. Xylosian observation platforms weave through the branches of genetically engineered trees. There is a section of the campus that was built by a species that went extinct 3,000 years ago, and their structures still stand, maintained by automated systems that no one remembers how to reprogram. The academy has its own weather, its own ecosystem, its own laws. It is a city, a fortress, and a university all in one. It is the closest thing the galaxy has to a neutral ground, a place where 800 species can coexist long enough to learn from each other before returning to their homeworlds to serve their governments. And until 6 months ago, it had never admitted a human. The Council's decision was controversial. Humans were a recently discovered species, barely a century into interstellar travel. They came from a Class 12 death world, the most dangerous classification in the galactic registry. Their home planet had radiation belts that would sterilize most species within hours, extreme weather systems that could destroy buildings, pathogens that could kill even species with advanced immune systems. The ecosystem of Earth had evolved to weaponize everything. Plants developed toxins so potent that a single touch could stop a heart. Animals developed venom that could dissolve tissue. Bacteria developed strategies for infecting and destroying hosts that made galactic medical experts reassess everything they thought they knew about biology. By all logical metrics, humans should not have survived. Their bodies were soft. Their skin was thin. They had no natural armor, no venom, no claws, no fangs. They could not see in the dark. They could not survive vacuum exposure. They could not regenerate limbs. They had no biological adaptations that would suggest they could thrive on a Class 12 death world. And yet, they had not only survived. They had thrived. They had built civilization. They had reached space. And now they wanted a seat at the table. The council debated for 3 standard cycles before reaching a decision. The arguments for admission were pragmatic. Humans were expanding rapidly. They would eventually become a major galactic power. It was better to integrate them now than to deal with the consequences of exclusion later. The arguments against admission were equally pragmatic. Humans were unknown, unpredictable. Their biology was dangerous. Their psychology was incomprehensible. Bringing them into the galactic community without proper study was an unacceptable risk. In the end, the council decided to start with 1 exchange student. 1 human, a test case. Her name was Jenna Lyons. I first saw her at the main transport hub. The shuttle door opened and she stepped out, and every cadet within visual range stopped what they were doing to stare. I was standing on an observation platform approximately 50 meters away, but even at that distance, I could feel the shift in the atmosphere. She was small by human standards, I learned later, barely 1.7 meters tall. Her hair was the color of dried blood, pulled back tightly from her face in a practical style that left nothing to interfere with her vision. She wore the standard academy uniform, but it hung differently on her. Looser, as if her body did not quite fit what the tailors expected. She carried a single bag. Nothing else. No entourage, no servants, no mountains of luggage. She looked around the hub with eyes that moved slowly, deliberately, cataloging everything. The exits, the windows, the crowd, the distances between objects, the height of the ceiling, the placement of structural supports. She did not look nervous. She looked like she was assessing threats and calculating response options. That was my first impression of humanity. A creature that entered a new environment and immediately mapped every possible danger, every potential avenue of escape, every tactical advantage and disadvantage. I had never seen anything like it. Most species arriving at the academy for the first time looked overwhelmed. The scale of the facility, the diversity of the species, the sheer sensory overload of the transport hub. Humans apparently looked for exit strategies first and asked questions later. I watched her walk through the crowd. Cadets parted around her, giving her space. Some stared openly. Others pretended not to notice while watching from the corners of their multiple eyes. She acknowledged none of them. She walked with a straight back and steady pace directly to the registration desk, presented her identification, and waited for processing with the patience of someone who had been waiting in lines her entire life. The Xylosian Concord does not produce warriors. We produce observers. And as an observer, I noted everything about Jenna Lyons in those first few minutes. The way she stood with her weight evenly distributed on both feet. The way her hands remained visible at all times. The way she never let any being get within arm's reach of her back. I did not know it then, but I was watching a species that had perfected the art of survival through pure, relentless adaptability. The xenobiology department was housed in a dome structure near the eastern edge of the campus. Professor Thrynn had been teaching there for 200 years. He was a Kro'shac, a species of ancient tortoise-like beings whose lifespan spanned millennia. His skin was thick and wrinkled, his movements slow and deliberate, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to come from somewhere far below his physical body. He had seen thousands of students pass through his classroom. He had taught species that no longer existed. He had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Nothing surprised him anymore, or so I thought. The first day of class, Jenna walked in and took a seat in the back row. The room fell silent. 12 species, 47 students, all turning to look at the human. I was sitting near the front, and I turned in my seat to watch. My skin was cycling through shades of pale green, the Xylosian equivalent of nervous curiosity. I had never seen a human up close before. None of us had. Professor Thrynn did not acknowledge her presence. He simply began his lecture. The holographic display at the front of the room flickered to life, showing a tall, slender insectoid figure with compound eyes and serrated forelimbs. The Xy'lorix mantis is one of the most efficient predators in known space, he said. Its reaction time is 3 times faster than the galactic average. Its forelimbs can strike with enough force to penetrate standard military armor. Its compound eyes can detect movement from nearly 300 meters away. It has no natural predators. He paused. Or rather, it had no natural predators. Until recently. He advanced the hologram. The image shifted to show a Xy'lorix standing opposite a human figure. The human was smaller by a wide margin, but the hologram depicted them facing each other as equals. The Terrans encountered the Xy'lorix during their first deep space expedition. There was a conflict. The details remain classified, but the casualty reports were surprising. He turned to face the class. The humans suffered losses, but so did the Xy'lorix. For the first time in their evolutionary history, a Xy'lorix had been killed by a species that did not possess natural weapons. The room was silent. I glanced at Jenna. She was taking notes, her face expressionless, her hand moving across her data pad with steady, unhurried strokes. If the professor's words affected her, she gave no sign. The Xy'lorix cadet sitting 3 rows ahead of me shifted in his seat. His name was Kro'shac. He was from one of the wealthiest agricultural families in the sector. His family's corporation supplied food to over 100 council member worlds. They also made substantial donations to the academy, enough that Kro'shac had been admitted despite academic scores that would have disqualified any other applicant. Kro'shac was tall even for a Xy'lorix, nearly 2.5 meters. His exoskeleton was a deep iridescent green, a sign of genetic superiority among his people. His compound eyes reflected the light in shifting patterns, like cut gemstones rotating in slow motion. He moved with the fluid precision of a creature that had never known fear, because he had never had reason to experience it. On his homeworld, he was at the top of the food chain. At the academy, he had carefully cultivated the same position through a combination of family wealth, political connections, and intimidation. He had been at the academy for 3 cycles and had never faced formal disciplinary action, despite a trail of incidents that everyone knew about but no one officially recorded. Cadets who crossed him had a habit of transferring to other departments. Cadets who refused his demands for academic assistance found their quarters vandalized. A Vrelian cadet who challenged Kro'shac during a tactical simulation was found unconscious in the training facility with injuries that required 3 weeks of medical regeneration. The official report called it an accident. Everyone knew better. But Kro'shac's family was too powerful, and no one was willing to testify against them. I had made it my practice to avoid him entirely. I am a Xylosian. My people are small and cautious. I know better than to attract the attention of apex predators. When Kro'shac entered a room, I made myself small. I kept my eyes down. I changed my skin to match the background and became part of the furniture. It was humiliating, but it was safe. But Jenna Lyons did not know better. Or if she did not care. The second week of class, Professor Thrynn assigned group projects. Each group was tasked with analyzing the biological defense mechanisms of a Class 10 or higher Death World species. The groups were assigned randomly by the Academy's administrative system, a process that was supposed to ensure diverse representation across species and backgrounds. Jenna was placed in Kro'shac's group. I watched from my seat as Kro'shac's compound eyes fixed on her. His mandibles twitched in what I later learned was a gesture of amusement among his people. It was the expression a predator makes when it spots easy prey. "Human," he said. His voice was a clicking, chittering sound that translated through the universal translator as flat and cold. "You will be our group's researcher. You will gather data. You will compile notes. You will present our findings." Jenna looked at him. She did not flinch. She did not look away. She met his compound eyes with her blue ones and said, "I will contribute to the group. same as everyone else. You misunderstand, Kro'shac said. I am not asking. I am telling. My family has funded expeditions that mapped half the species on your file. You will do the work, and you will thank me for the opportunity to learn from my genetic betters. The room was very quiet. I could hear my own breathing. I could hear the hum of the environmental systems. I could hear the faint clicking of Kro'shac's mandibles as he waited for her response. Jenna held his gaze for a long moment. Then she said, I will start with the research. We can divide the presentation tasks after I have the data. It was not a confrontation, but it was not a submission either. It was a tactical withdrawal, a repositioning for a better angle. I did not understand that at the time. I only saw that she had not backed down, but she had not escalated either. She had found a middle path that preserved her dignity without provoking an attack. Kro'shac's mandibles clicked again, and he turned away. I saw his forelimbs flex, the serrated edges catching the light. He was not satisfied with her answer, but he could not find a reason to challenge it without appearing unreasonable in front of the professor. I made a note in my datapad. Human female. 1.7 meters. No natural weapons. Refused to submit to Xy'lorix dominance display. Selected tactical compromise rather than direct confrontation. Outcome inconclusive. I did not know what to make of it. The weeks that followed confirmed my unease. Kro'shac's behavior toward Jenna escalated in a pattern I recognized from his previous victims. Small provocations at first. Comment here. A challenge there. Nothing that would attract the attention of the instructors, but enough to create a constant atmosphere of pressure. He questioned her biology. Human lungs were inefficient, he said. Human skin was too thin. Human eyes were poorly adapted for low-light conditions. He pointed out that humans could not survive in vacuum, could not regenerate tissue, could not digest half the foods available in the Academy's mess hall. By every biological metric, he argued, humans were inferior. Jenna listened to all of this without reaction. When Kro'shac finished his criticisms, she would simply say, and yet, here I am, and return to her work. This infuriated Kro'shac more than any direct argument could have. He could not provoke her. He could not rattle her. He could not find the emotional weakness that every species had. The other cadets began to notice. They watched Jenna with growing curiosity, wondering what it would take to break her composure. Nothing, as it turned out. Nothing could break her composure. The weeks that followed were a careful dance. Kro'shac tested Jenna repeatedly. He questioned her findings in front of the class. He challenged her conclusions. He made comments about her species' primitive technology and backward culture. He mocked her homeworld as a backwater rock with no contributions to galactic civilization. He suggested that humans were a fluke of evolution, a brief anomaly that would soon be corrected by natural selection. Jenna responded with data. Every time Kro'shac challenged her, she produced documentation. She cited sources. She showed her work. Her answers were precise, thorough, and completely unassailable. She never raised her voice. She never showed anger. She simply presented facts and let them speak for themselves. I was impressed by her discipline. Among my people, emotions are visible on the skin. There is no hiding what you feel. But Jenna's face was a mask of calm at all times. Later, I would learn that this was a human survival adaptation. Predators on Earth could sense fear, so humans learned to hide it. They could be terrified on the inside and calm on the outside, and this dissociation between internal state and external appearance was one of their most effective defensive mechanisms. Professor Thrynn watched all of this without comment. I do not know if he was testing her, testing Kro'shac, or simply observing the interaction as a matter of academic interest. He had been teaching for 2 centuries. He had seen every dynamic play out between every combination of species. Perhaps he was waiting to see how this one would resolve. Perhaps he already knew and was simply allowing events to unfold according to their natural trajectory. I was not so patient. I watched Kro'shac's behavior escalate, and I felt the cold grip of fear tighten around my chest. I had seen this pattern before. The minor provocations, the tests of dominance, the slow, deliberate campaign to break a target's will. Kro'shac was not a random bully. He was methodical. He understood that true conquest was not achieved through a single dramatic confrontation but through 1,000 small humiliations that accumulated until the target broke under the weight. I had seen it happen to a Threxian cadet 2 cycles ago. The cadet's name was Threx. He was from a species of large, powerful bipeds with thick hides and formidable strength. He had made the mistake of standing up to Kro'shac during a training exercise. Nothing violent, just a verbal disagreement about tactics. But Kro'shac had taken it as a challenge, and over the following months, he had systematically destroyed Threx's life at the academy. Academic sabotage, social isolation, physical intimidation disguised as accidents. By the end of the semester, Threx had transferred out. No one talked about why. No one asked. We all knew. I approached Jenna after class one evening. The xenobiology dome was empty except for the 2 of us. The holographic displays had been powered down, leaving the room in near darkness except for the emergency lighting that ran along the base of the walls. She was packing her datapad, preparing to leave. "Jenna," I said. My skin shifted to a pale blue, the Xylosian color of concern. "May I speak with you?" She looked at me. Her eyes were the color of the sky on Terra, I later learned. A rare pigment among galactic species. Most species had eyes adapted for specific light conditions. Human eyes were generalist organs, capable of functioning across a wide range of environments. Another adaptation from their death world. "Of course, Vix'thal. I have been watching Kro'shac's behavior toward you," I said. "I do not think you understand the danger you are in." She tilted her head. "Explain." "Kro'shac is a Xy'lorix. His people are apex predators. They do not respond to challenges. They respond to displays of dominance. Every time you resist his authority, you are marking yourself as an opponent. And Xy'lorix do not tolerate opponents. What do you suggest I do? Submit. At least publicly. Let him think he is in control. It is the only way to stay safe." She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes searched my face, and I realized she was reading my skin, interpreting the colors that I could not hide. She saw my fear. She saw my genuine concern. And she saw something else, something I did not recognize at the time. She saw a kindred spirit, another creature from a world where being small and cautious was the price of survival. Then she said, "Where I come from, submission is not safety. It is an invitation. I do not understand. On my homeworld, predators do not respect submission. They interpret it as weakness. And weakness is a signal that you are prey. If I submit to Kro'shac, he will not stop. He will escalate. He will demand more. And eventually, when there is nothing left to demand, he will destroy me anyway. Submission does not work against predators, Vix'thal. It only works against civilized beings who recognize authority. Kro'shac is not civilized. He is a predator wearing the uniform of a cadet." She picked up her datapad. "I appreciate your concern, but I have dealt with bullies before. They are the same in every species. They only understand one language." I stood in the empty dome for a long time after she left. The lights had automatically dimmed, triggered by the motion sensors detecting no activity. I was alone with my thoughts and the slowly cycling colors of my skin. Her words echoed in my mind. Submission is an invitation. I had never considered that possibility. In my world, in my species, submission was the only path to survival. You submitted to the predator, and the predator moved on to find easier prey. But Jenna was saying that predators did not move on. They came back. They demanded more. And eventually, when there was nothing left to demand, they took everything. I thought about the Threxian cadet who had transferred out. I thought about the Vrelian who had been found unconscious. I thought about all the small, quiet incidents that I had witnessed and said nothing about because I was afraid of becoming the next target. Was submission really survival? Or was it just delayed destruction? I did not have an answer that night. But the question stayed with me. It followed me to my quarters. It followed me through my dreams. It followed me into the next day, and the next, and the next, growing larger and more insistent with each passing hour. 3 weeks later, I got my answer. She walked out of the dome. I stood there, my skin cycling through shades of anxiety, wondering what she meant. What language did she mean? What could a soft-skinned, unarmed human possibly offer as an alternative to submission? I found out 3 weeks later. The incident occurred during a field exercise in the Academy's biodome, a controlled environment designed to simulate hazardous planetary conditions. The biodome was a massive structure, half a kilometer in diameter, filled with replicated ecosystems from a dozen different worlds. The exercise was a standard xenobiology assignment. Cadets were tasked with cataloging the defensive adaptations of Class 8 flora specimens. It was supposed to be routine, nothing dangerous, nothing that required supervision beyond the standard remote monitoring. Kro'shac had other plans. I was stationed near the Eastern Observation Platform, recording data on a phosphorescent vine that secreted a mild neurotoxin, when I heard the commotion. Cadet voices raised in alarm. The distinctive chitter of Xy'lorix aggression calls. The sound of something heavy hitting stone. And beneath it all, a sound I had never heard before. A low, steady voice speaking words I could not quite make out. Every instinct in my body told me to run, to hide, to change color and blend into the background and pretend I had not seen anything. That was what Xylosians did. That was what I had done my entire life. But I did not run. I climbed. I do not know what made me do it. Maybe it was Jenna's words echoing in my head. Submission is an invitation. Maybe it was the memory of the Thryxian cadet, and the guilt I still carried for not helping him. Maybe it was something else. Something I did not have a name for yet. Whatever it was, it pushed me up that platform. It pushed me to raise my datapad and activate the magnifier. Pushed me to watch, even though every cell in my body was screaming at me to look away. I am glad I watched, because what I saw changed my life. I climbed the platform to get a better view. My hands were shaking. My skin had gone pale blue with streaks of gray, a color combination that indicated extreme fear. I knew what was happening before I saw it. I had known it was coming. I had warned her, and now it was too late. Kro'shac had cornered Jenna against a rock formation near the edge of the simulated jungle. His forelimbs were raised, the serrated edges gleaming in the artificial light. His compound eyes were fixed on her with the intensity of a predator that had cornered its prey. Behind him, a cluster of cadets watched in frozen horror. No one moved to intervene. No one dared. The instructors were not present. The exercise was designed to be unsupervised, to test the cadets' ability to work independently. Professor Thrynn was monitoring from the central control room, but he was known for his policy of non-interference. He believed that cadets should resolve their own conflicts. It was a philosophy that had served the Academy for 10,000 years, producing officers who could think for themselves and handle crises without waiting for orders. But it also meant that when a Xy'lorix aristocrat decided to attack a human student, there was no one to stop him. I later learned what triggered the confrontation. Kro'shac had demanded that Jenna falsify her data to make his family's agricultural products appear more effective than they were in the Academy's simulation models. It was a simple request, the kind of thing he had done dozens of times before with other cadets. Falsify the data, earn his favor, receive protection from his family's influence after graduation. It was how Kro'shac operated. Corruption wrapped in obligation. Jenna had refused. Kro'shac had threatened her. Jenna had ignored the threat and continued her work. That was when Kro'shac attacked. I saw it happen. I was watching through my datapad's magnifier, my skin a frozen shade of terror, my heart beating so fast I thought I would pass out. Kro'shac struck with the speed of his species. His forelimb sliced through the air toward Jenna's throat with enough force to decapitate a being twice her size. It should have killed her. It did not. Jenna moved. I do not have a better word for it. She simply was not there anymore. She had dropped, spun, and repositioned herself behind Kro'shac's striking range in a motion so fluid it looked rehearsed. Her feet had shifted before his blow arrived, as if she had known exactly where the strike would land before he even began the movement. Kro'shac's forelimb hit the rock formation behind where she had been standing. The impact shattered the stone, sending fragments flying across the biodome floor. He turned, surprised. His compound eyes swept the area, searching for her. No prey had ever evaded his strike before. No species in known space had the reaction time to dodge a Xy'lorix attack at close range. Jenna was in a crouch, her weight balanced, her hands open and raised in front of her face. She was breathing slowly, evenly. Her eyes were fixed on Kro'shac with an intensity that matched his own. She looked at him the same way he looked at prey. But there was something else in her expression. Something I did not understand until later. She was calm. "That was your warning," she said. "Stand down." Kro'shac's mandibles clicked in fury. He struck again. Faster this time, a combination of slashes designed to overwhelm any defense. His forelimbs moved in a pattern that had evolved over millions of years, optimized for cutting through the thickest hides and the toughest exoskeletons in the galaxy. Jenna slipped between them. She moved inside his reach where his forelimbs could not strike effectively. She grabbed one of his arms at the joint and used his own momentum to pull him off balance. Kro'shac stumbled, his insectoid legs scrambling for purchase on the uneven ground. The watching cadets gasped. I gasped. I had never seen a Xy'lorix stumble. They were built for stability, with 4 legs that could grip any surface. Kro'shac recovered and lunged again. This time, Jenna did not evade. She stepped forward and met his attack head-on. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. But I have replayed those seconds in my mind thousands of times since that day. I have analyzed every movement, every angle, every decision, and I still cannot fully explain what I saw. Jenna caught Kro'shac's striking forelimb at the wrist joint. Her hands locked around the narrow gap between 2 armor plates, a weak point that no xenobiologist had ever documented because no one had ever been close enough to a living Xy'lorix to find it. She rotated her body, using his own forward momentum against him. She drove her elbow into the exposed joint just below the primary armor plate. The shell cracked with a sound like breaking stone. Kro'shac screeched, a sound I had never heard a Xy'lorix make. A sound of pain. A sound of fear. His species did not feel pain the way most species did. Their nervous systems were optimized for combat, with pain receptors that only activated when significant damage occurred. The fact that he felt anything at all meant that Jenna had done real damage. Jenna did not stop. She shifted her grip, locked his arm at an unnatural angle, and delivered a strike to his throat with the heel of her hand. The blow was precise, surgical. It targeted a gap in his natural armor that no one had ever documented because no one had ever thought to look for it. Kro'shac's tracheal system collapsed. He made a wet, choking sound and fell to his knees. His compound eyes, which had reflected only confidence and dominance moments before, now showed something else. Confusion. Disbelief. The dawning realization that he was not the apex predator in this encounter. And then Jenna grabbed his head and twisted. The sound was like breaking a thick branch. Kro'shac's body went limp. His head came away from his shoulders with a clean snap. Green ichor sprayed across the rocks, pooling in the cracks and crevices of the simulated terrain. Jenna stood there, holding Kro'shac's head in her hands. She looked at it for a moment. Her expression was not triumphant. It was not angry. It was neutral, almost clinical, as if she were examining a specimen in a laboratory. Then she set it down on a nearby rock, carefully, almost gently. The biodome was silent. Jenna turned to the watching cadets. Her uniform was covered in green ichor. Her face was calm. Her breathing was steady, as if she had just completed a routine physical exercise, rather than killed an apex predator with her bare hands. "Someone should call the dean," she said. "I do not remember moving. But I must have because I found myself outside the biodome, my skin cycling through colors I did not know I could produce, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my data pad. I sat down on the ground and put my head between my knees and tried to remember how to breathe. The next hours were a blur of activity. Medical teams arrived. Security officers. The dean herself. The biodome was sealed. The exercise was terminated. All cadets were confined to their quarters pending investigation. Dean Vel'kora was a luminari, a species of crystalline beings whose bodies glowed with internal light. She was tall and slender, with facets that caught and refracted light in patterns that were beautiful and unsettling at the same time. She had served as dean of the academy for 40 years. She was known for her calm, her wisdom, and her unwavering commitment to protocol. She stood over Kro'shac's body, her crystalline surface pulsing with a slow, steady light. Her expression was unreadable, which was normal for luminari. Their faces were fixed crystalline structures that did not change with emotion in the same way organic faces did. "Report," she said. The security officer assigned to the biodome stepped forward. He was a Thryxian, one of Kro'shac's previous victims. I recognized him from the transfer list. He had not transferred after all. He had stayed and taken a position in academy security. I wondered if he had been waiting for this moment. "Cadet Kro'shac initiated an unprovoked attack on Cadet Lyons," he said. His voice was steady, professional. Cadet Lyons defended herself. Kro'shac was killed in the engagement. Witnesses: 47 cadets. All give consistent accounts. Biodome sensor logs confirm the sequence of events. Cadet Kro'shac's attack was premeditated. He maneuvered Cadet Lyons into a position where she could not retreat before striking. Dean Vel'kora turned to Jenna. Jenna stood at attention, still covered in ichor, her face composed. She had not been given time to clean up. She had not asked. "Cadet Lyons," the dean said. "Do you have anything to add?" "No, Dean Vel'kora. The officer's account is accurate. You understand that this incident will have diplomatic consequences. Kro'shac's family holds significant influence on the council." "I understand. And you understand that, under academy regulations, you acted within your rights. A cadet who initiates an unprovoked attack assumes all risk of injury or death. The academy's legal code has upheld this principle for 10,000 years." "I understand." Dean Vel'kora studied her for a long moment. Her crystalline structure pulsed with light, cycling through a sequence that I later learned indicated deep contemplation. "You are dismissed, Cadet Lyons. Report to the medical bay for evaluation. You will be contacted regarding any further proceedings." Jenna saluted and walked away. I watched her go. She moved the same way she had when she stepped off the shuttle. Calm, deliberate, unbroken. The academy went into lockdown for 3 days. The lead representative was Kro'shac's uncle, a Xy'lorix named Thrynn. He was older than Kro'shac, with a darker exoskeleton that showed signs of battle damage. Scars, cracks that had healed imperfectly. He was not a businessman like the rest of his family. He was a warrior, and he was furious. I saw him at the initial meeting with Dean Vel'kora. His compound eyes were fixed on Jenna with an intensity that made my skin turn a pale, sickly blue. He did not speak to her. He did not acknowledge her presence. But he watched her the way a predator watches prey that has escaped once and will not escape again. "This is not over," he said to Dean Vel'kora as he left the meeting. "The Xy'lorix will not forget this day. The human has made an enemy of my family, and my family does not forgive." Dean Vel'kora's crystalline surface pulsed with calm, steady light. "The academy does not forget either, Representative Thrynn. And we protect our own." The exchange was brief, but it set the tone for everything that followed. Kro'shac's family sent representatives. There were meetings, negotiations, legal arguments. The galactic news networks picked up the story. Human cadet kills Xy'lorix in self-defense. Galactic Military Academy faces diplomatic crisis. Death World species proves lethal in Academy confrontation. I followed every development with the intensity of a scholar documenting an extinction event. Kro'shac's family demanded Jenna's expulsion and extradition to their homeworld for trial. They sent a legal team that had won cases before the highest courts in the galaxy. They threatened to withdraw their funding. They threatened to use their influence on the council to shut down the Academy's xenobiology program entirely. The Academy held firm. What broke the standoff was the testimony. Professor Thrynn came forward with his observation logs. 200 years of teaching experience, and he had documented every interaction between Kro'shac and every other cadet he had bullied. The logs were comprehensive, detailed, damning. They covered 3 cycles of Kro'shac's behavior, tracking every incident, every complaint, every pattern of intimidation and abuse. Cadet Kro'shac's pattern of behavior has been consistent since his first semester, Professor Xy'lorix stated in his testimony. He targeted weaker species. He used his family's influence to avoid consequences. He believed he was above the law. The human did not create this situation. She simply ended it. The Thryxian security officer also came forward. He testified about his own experience with Kro'shac, confirming that the pattern of behavior was consistent with what had been documented. Other cadets, emboldened by the testimony, began to speak. A Vrelian who had been threatened, a Xy'lorix who had been coerced. A small cluster of species who had suffered in silence for cycles finally found the courage to share their stories. The hearing lasted 3 standard days. The council chamber was packed with representatives from over 100 species. News feeds from across the galaxy broadcast every moment. The human cadet who killed a Xy'lorix had become the most famous being in known space. Kro'shac's family sent their best legal team. They argued that Jenna had used excessive force. They argued that a Xy'lorix attack was a display of dominance, not a lethal threat. They argued that Jenna, as a human, should have known that her actions would be interpreted as a declaration of war against the Xy'lorix species. The prosecution presented holographic evidence from the biodome sensors. The recording showed Kro'shac cornering Jenna. It showed his first strike, aimed directly at her throat with lethal force. It showed her dodge, her counter, her precise surgical takedown. They played the recording 3 times. Each time, the chamber was silent. Dean Vel'kora testified on Jenna's behalf. Her crystalline surface glowed with calm, steady light as she explained Academy protocol and the legal precedents that supported Jenna's actions. The Academy has existed for 10,000 years, she said. In that time, we have processed over 4,000 cases of lethal self-defense by cadets. In every case where the defender acted within the limits of proportional response, they were exonerated. Cadet Lyons' actions were textbook proportional response. She attempted to de-escalate verbally. She warned her attacker. She used only the force necessary to neutralize the threat. The Xy'lorix legal representative challenged her. She ripped his head off. Dean, that is not neutralization. That is execution. Dean Vel'kora turned her crystalline gaze on the representative. Your species evolved on a world where decapitation is the standard method of killing prey. Are you suggesting that Cadet Lyons should have known a more civilized method than the one your own biology dictates? The chamber erupted in murmurs. The representative had no response. Professor Thrynn testified next. His logs were entered into evidence, cataloging 3 cycles of Kro'shac's abusive behavior. He spoke slowly, deliberately, his ancient voice carrying the weight of 2 centuries of teaching. I have watched thousands of cadets pass through my classroom, he said. I have seen bullies and victims, predators and prey. I have seen the strong exploit the weak and the weak learn to become strong. Cadet Kro'shac was a bully of the most dangerous kind. He had power and he used it without restraint. Cadet Lyons did not start this conflict. She finished it. That is the difference. The hearing concluded with a unanimous ruling. Jenna Lyons had acted in self-defense. No charges would be filed. No disciplinary action would be taken. Kro'shac's family announced they would withdraw from the Academy. They also announced a significant donation to fund a new scholarship program for students from underrepresented species. The timing of the donation was not coincidental. It was the price of avoiding further scrutiny into Kro'shac's activities. The news networks moved on to other stories. The galaxy returned to its business. But something had changed. The council reviewed the evidence. They ruled that Jenna had acted in self-defense. Kro'shac's family was permitted to withdraw from the Academy without further penalty, provided they compensated the families of Kro'shac's previous victims and funded a new scholarship program for students from underrepresented species. But the Academy was not the same. Could not be. The incident had cracked something open. Cadets who had been silent for cycles began to speak. Reports of bullying poured into the dean's office from species across the Academy. Vrelians, Xy'lorix, Xylosians, Small species who had suffered in silence because they believed no one would help them. Dean Vel'kora established a new office dedicated to investigating bullying and harassment. She appointed a board of representatives from 12 different species to oversee it. The board's first action was to review every complaint filed in the last 5 cycles. The results were sobering. I read the report when it was released. Hundreds of incidents, dozens of victims, a culture of silence that had protected bullies and punished prey. The report recommended sweeping changes to Academy policy, including mandatory conflict resolution training for all cadets and anonymous reporting systems for victims. The council approved every recommendation. I thought about Jenna as I read the report. She had not just defended herself. She had exposed a system that had been broken for longer than anyone wanted to admit. And by exposing it, she had given others the courage to speak. The Kro'shac cadet who had confronted Jenna in the mess hall came to me after the report was released. His name was Xy'lorix. He was twice my size and could have crushed me with one hand. But when he spoke, his voice was quiet. "She was right," he said. "About the seat. About everything. I have been a bully my whole life because that was what my species does. But watching her stand up to Kro'shac made me realize that I did not have to be what my species does. I could choose something else." He enrolled in Jenna's self-defense seminar the next day. Not to learn how to fight, to learn how to teach others not to. The academy returned to normal. Classes resumed. The xenobiology dome opened again. But nothing was the same. Jenna became something of a legend. Cadets who had ignored her before now greeted her in the halls. Cadets who had been afraid of Kro'shac now sought her out for advice. Cadets from vulnerable species approached her for protection, and she never turned them away. At first, they came to her with questions. How had she known where to strike? How had she developed the reaction time to dodge a Xy'lorix attack? How had she stayed calm when facing a creature that could kill her with a single blow? Jenna answered their questions patiently. She explained the principles of Krav Maga, the martial art she had trained in since childhood. She explained that humans had developed dozens of fighting systems over thousands of years, each optimized for different situations. Krav Maga was designed for real-world combat, not sport. It focused on disabling an opponent as quickly as possible using any means available. "It is not elegant," she told a group of Vel'kora cadets who had gathered around her after class. "It is not beautiful. It is efficient. The goal is to survive. Everything else is secondary." The Vel'koras asked if she would teach them. She hesitated at first. She was not an instructor. She was a student just like them. But they persisted, and eventually she agreed. Word spread quickly. Within a week, Jenna was running an informal self-defense seminar in one of the unused training rooms. Cadets from a dozen species attended. Small species, vulnerable species, species that had spent their entire evolutionary history being prey. The first session was chaos. 15 cadets from 8 different species, all trying to learn human combat techniques with bodies that worked completely differently from human bodies. The Xy'lorix had 4 arms. The Vel'koran had tentacles instead of legs. The Xy'lorix was 3 meters tall and weighed 400 kilograms. Jenna adapted immediately. She did not try to force her techniques onto their bodies. Instead, she taught principles: leverage, momentum, target selection. She showed each cadet how to apply these principles using their own unique anatomy. "Your body is a weapon," she told the Vel'koran, who had no bones to speak of. "It may not be a weapon that looks like mine, but every body has weak points and strong points. Learn yours. Learn your opponent's. Exploit the difference." By the 3rd session, attendance had doubled. By the 5th session, cadets were bringing their friends. The training room was packed every evening. I watched Jenna's teaching style evolve over those weeks. She was patient with beginners and demanding with advanced students. She never raised her voice. She never showed frustration. When a cadet failed to execute a technique correctly, she showed them again and again until they got it right. "You are not competing with anyone," she told us. "You are learning to survive. There is no shame in being slow. There is no shame in being weak. The only shame is giving up." I attended every session. I watched Jenna teach beings twice her size how to defend themselves. She did not teach them to be strong. She taught them to be smart. She taught them where to strike. She taught them how to use an attacker's momentum against them. She taught them that the most important weapon they had was the willingness to fight back. The first time you get hit, you will want to give up, she told us. That is your survival instinct telling you to submit. Do not listen to it. The survival instinct that tells you to submit evolved on a world where submission might save you. On Earth, submission gets you killed. Fight back. Even if you lose, fight back. Because the message you send by fighting back will protect you long after the fight is over. I wrote down every word. I still have those notes. She became a symbol of something that the Academy had never had before. Hope for the small and the cautious. Proof that predators could be stopped. She handled it with the same calm she had handled everything. She did not seek attention. She did not trade on her reputation. She did not posture or boast. She simply continued her studies as if nothing had happened, attending classes, completing assignments, treating everyone with the same neutral respect she had shown from the first day. One evening, I found her sitting alone in the observation platform overlooking the training grounds. The sun was setting behind the domes, casting long shadows across the campus. The training fields below were empty, the cadets having returned to their quarters for the evening. "May I join you?" I asked. She nodded. I sat beside her. We watched the sunset in silence. It was a beautiful view. The sky was turning shades of purple and orange, the colors reflecting off the crystalline domes and casting rainbows across the campus. "I owe you an apology," I said finally. She looked at me. "For what?" "The day I told you to submit to Kro'shac. I was wrong. You were right. Submission is not safety. Not for your people." She was quiet for a moment. The sun continued to set, painting the sky in deeper shades of crimson. "It is not that submission is bad," she said. "It is that you have to know who you are submitting to. A reasonable authority figure can be negotiated with. Predator cannot." Kro'shac was not interested in respect. He was interested in dominance. There is no middle ground with someone like that. "How did you know?" "Because I grew up around predators. Earth is full of them. Lions, tigers, bears, wolves, sharks. Humans were not the strongest species on our planet. We were not the fastest. We did not have the sharpest teeth or the thickest hides. Every single predator on Earth could kill a human if it caught us unprepared." She paused. "But we had this." She tapped her temple. "We could plan. We could strategize. We could work together. And we could learn to fight smarter, not harder." Kro'shac evolved to be an apex predator. He was the strongest, fastest, most dangerous thing in his environment. He never had to learn strategy because he never needed it. Humans evolved to be apex survivors. There is a difference. I thought about that for a long time. About the difference between being strong and being adaptable. About the difference between dominating an environment and surviving in it. "I have been afraid my whole life," I said. "My species has been afraid for 1,000,000 years. It is how we survived. But watching you, I realized that fear does not have to define me. It can be a tool, not a cage." She looked at me. For the first time, I saw something like warmth in her eyes, a softening of the mask she wore. "That is a very human thing to say, Vix'thal." I did not know if that was a compliment, but I decided to take it as one. We sat in silence for a while longer. The sun had fully set now, and the training grounds below were dark except for the safety lights that lined the pathways. Stars were beginning to appear in the sky above the domes. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "You can ask. What were you thinking when Kro'shac attacked you? What was going through your mind?" She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I was thinking about my grandmother. She grew up on a farm in a place called Nebraska. There was a bull on her farm that killed 2 people before she was born. It was massive, dangerous. Everyone was afraid of it. One day, when she was 16, that bull charged her in the pasture. She had nowhere to run, no weapon, no help coming. What did she do? She stood her ground. At the last second, she stepped aside and hit it in the nose with a fence post she had been carrying. The bull went down. She walked away. Jenna turned to look at me. She told me that story when I was 8 years old. She said, "Jenna, the universe is full of things that are bigger and stronger and faster than you. But size and strength and speed are not the only weapons. The most important weapon you have is between your ears. Use it." So when Kro'shac attacked me, I was not thinking about how big he was or how fast he was. I was thinking about what my grandmother taught me. I was thinking about where his joints were weakest. I was thinking about how to use his momentum against him. I was thinking about the angle I needed to hit to collapse his tracheal system. I was not fighting Kro'shac. I was solving a problem. I stared at her. You killed an apex predator by solving a problem. That is what humans do, Vix'thal. We solve problems. Sometimes the problem is a bull. Sometimes it is a Xy'lorix. Sometimes it is a trade negotiation between species who have been killing each other for generations. But the approach is the same. Identify the weakness. Exploit it. Move on. I thought about that for a long time. About the difference between strength and intelligence. About the difference between evolution that produces armor and evolution that produces strategy. "I think I understand now," I said. "Why the council was afraid of your species." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you are not dangerous because of what you can do. You are dangerous because of how you think. Every other species in the galaxy evolved to fit their environment. Humans evolved to change theirs. That is terrifying." She smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible in the darkness. But it was the first time I had seen her show any emotion beyond calm neutrality. "You are going to make a good xenobiologist, Vix'thal." The semester ended. Jenna finished at the top of her class. Professor Thrynn wrote her a recommendation that he said was the finest he had written in a century. Dean Vel'kora personally recommended her for the Council's diplomatic corps, citing her exceptional judgment under pressure. I still keep in contact with her. She graduated and joined the Council's diplomatic corps. Last I heard, she was stationed on a frontier world, negotiating a trade agreement between 3 species who had been at war for generations. They asked for a human mediator, I was told, because humans understand things that other species do not. I think about that sometimes. About the day I watched a woman from a Class 12 death world defeat an apex predator with nothing but her body and her will. About the lesson she taught me. Fear is not the enemy. The enemy is letting fear decide who you are. I still carry that lesson with me. Every time I feel the old instinct to shrink, to hide, to change color and disappear into the background. I think of Jenna Lyons standing over Kro'shac's body, covered in green ichor, her eyes calm, her voice steady, and I straighten my spine and face the world. I graduated from the academy 1 cycle after Jenna. The defense was held in the main auditorium. Professor Thrynn presided, along with 3 other department heads and a representative from the Council's Scientific Advisory Board. The room was packed. Cadets, instructors, journalists, even Dean Vel'kora attended. I was terrified. My skin cycled through every color in the Xylosian spectrum. But I thought of Jenna, standing in the biodome with green ichor on her uniform, facing a creature that could have killed her. And I straightened my spine. I presented my research for 2 hours. I analyzed human biomechanics. I documented the martial arts that humans had developed over thousands of years of conflict. I compared human combat strategies to those of other Death World species. I concluded that humans were not exceptional because of any single adaptation. They were exceptional because of their ability to adapt to any situation. The human body is fragile, I said at the conclusion of my defense. It breaks easily, heals slowly. It has no natural weapons and limited environmental tolerance. But the human mind is the most dangerous weapon in known space. Can analyze, can strategize. It can learn from mistakes and apply those lessons to new situations. Humans are not apex predators. They are apex survivors. And in a universe full of predators, survivors are the ones who shape the future. The room was silent for a long moment after I finished. Then Professor Thrynn began to applaud. Slowly, deliberately, and the rest of the room followed. My thesis was on human defensive adaptations, and it received the highest academic honor the xenobiology department has ever awarded. Professor Thrynn said it was the most important work on interspecies combat analysis published in the last 50 years. I dedicated it to Jenna. My office is in the xenobiology dome on the upper level with a window that overlooks the training grounds. I have a view of the exact spot where the biodome used to stand. They renovated it after the incident. The rock formation where Kro'shac died was removed and replaced with a memorial garden dedicated to victims of bullying. It was Dean Vel'kora's idea. She said the space needed to be reclaimed for something positive. My students sometimes ask me about it. They see me staring out the window during lectures, and they follow my gaze to the garden below. They know the story. Everyone at the academy knows the story. Was it worth it? A student asked me last semester. She was a young Xylosian, barely out of her first cycle. She had joined my seminar because she was afraid. Afraid of the larger cadets. Afraid of the predators. Afraid of being prey. Was what worth it? I asked. The human killing Kro'shac. All the chaos that followed. The diplomatic incident. The media attention. Was it worth it? I thought about the question for a long moment. I thought about Jenna, standing over Kro'shac's body, covered in green ichor. I thought about the Phyrexian cadet who had transferred out. I thought about the Vrelian who had been found unconscious. I thought about all the cadets who had suffered in silence because no one had been willing to stop Kro'shac. Yes, I said. It was worth it, not because Kro'shac deserved to die, but because Jenna proved that he could be stopped. And that changed everything for the people he had been terrorizing. The young Xylosian nodded slowly. Her skin cycled through shades of thoughtful green. I want to learn, she said. Will you teach me? I smiled. It was not a human smile. Xylosians do not smile. But I made a gesture of acceptance that was recognizable across species. Yes, I said. I will teach you. I look at that garden every day. It reminds me of why I do this work. I am now a research fellow at the Academy, studying the intersection of evolutionary biology and combat strategy. My work focuses on how death world species develop adaptive responses to environmental threats. It is a small field, but it is growing. More and more species want to understand how humans do what they do. I still speak with Jenna regularly. She sends me reports from her diplomatic postings, and I send her my research papers. She reads them, even though she claims she does not understand half of what I write. I do not believe her. Jenna Lyons understands more than she lets on. Last month, she was promoted to lead negotiator for the Council's Frontier Expansion Initiative. It is the highest diplomatic position a human has ever held. The Xy'lorix delegation objected, of course, but their objection was overruled. The Council has learned that when humans are involved, it is better to have them on your side than against you. I think about Kro'shac sometimes. Not with pity. He made his choices and he paid the price for them. But I think about what he represented. The old order. The belief that strength and power are the only things that matter. He was wrong. Jenna proved that. But I also think about how many species still believe what Kro'shac believed. How many young cadets arrive at the academy every year thinking that the universe belongs to the strong, and that the weak must submit or die. I teach a seminar now. Introduction to Interspecies Conflict Resolution. It is not a popular class. Most cadets would rather study weapons systems than communication strategies. But every semester a handful of students show up. Usually they are from species like mine. Small species. Vulnerable species. Species that have spent their entire evolutionary history being prey. I tell them the story of Jenna Lyons. I show them the recordings of her fight with Kro'shac. I walk them through her movements frame by frame. I explain the biomechanics of how a 1.7-meter human defeated a 2.5-meter Xy'lorix. I calculate the forces involved, the angles of impact, the precise anatomical targeting that made the kill possible. Some of my students are horrified. They come from species that have never killed anything. The idea of using lethal force is alien to them. Others are fascinated. They come from species that have been victims for too long. They see Jenna's story as a blueprint for liberation. Both reactions are valid. I tell them that the goal is not to become killers. The goal is to become people who cannot be killed. I tell them that being small does not mean being weak. I tell them that being afraid does not mean being helpless. And I tell them that the most dangerous creature in the galaxy is not the one with the sharpest claws or the strongest armor. It is the one that refuses to accept that the universe has already decided its fate. That is the lesson I learned from a woman who stepped off a shuttle from a Class 12 death world and changed everything I thought I knew about survival. That is the lesson I carry with me every day. Fear is not the enemy. The enemy is letting fear decide who you are. Please like and subscribe to our channel.